Hello, I'm Miss Carla. Welcome to my read-aloud time. This is the butt of Charlie, my cat. Oh, look, here's her head. Charlie, say hello. Hello. We are starting a new book today. It's called City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab. Victoria Schwab has written quite a lot of books. I think this is the first book that she wrote for a middle grade audience. Before that, she wrote for teenagers and adults. And she generally writes magical or paranormal type things, I think. The ones that I've read. I've never read anything that was just realistic. This is sort of a mix. It's got a lot of realism in it, but it's also got some spookiness, as you can see just by looking at the cover. When Victoria Schwab writes for adults, I think it is, she goes by V.E. Schwab. But I think she goes by Victoria when she writes for teens. I think she does that just to help keep it straight who her audience is for her books. Charlie is snuggling. She's nuzzling my little desk here, and it's making the computer move. So this is what we're going to read today. And you can see, look, the main character has a cat too. But that cat's a little spookier looking than Charlie. All right. City of Ghosts. Ooh, look, the title page is all black. Spooky. Oh, here it shows. Also by Victoria Schwab and as V.E. Schwab. So yeah, these are the books that are for adults. And, oh, she's written a book in the Spirit Animals series. So that's for middle grade. And Everyday Angel. I'm not familiar with that one. But The Savage Song and Our Dark Duet are both teen books, so I think these are all for younger folks, I guess you could say. Non-adults. Oh, this is interesting. Charlie, I'm trying to show this book. In the place where the author would normally put an inscription to somebody, or a dedication, it says, to the city where I keep my bones. I don't know if it's the same city as the City of Bones. And then here it says, to die will be an awfully big adventure by J.M. Barrie in Peter Pan. I remember that Peter Pan says that. Charlie. And, oh, here we have Cassidy's map of Edinburgh, Scotland. I like it when there are maps in books. And so Edinburgh is a real place. So I think these are all real places. There's Edinburgh Castle, the Lane's End, Royal Mile, Mary King's Close, Blackwell's Bookshop, South Bridge, Arthur's Seat, Greyfriar Kirk, and Grassmarket. Part 1, The Inspectors. Do you see how inspectors is spelled? That E-R-S at the end? It's not how you would normally spell the word inspector. Chapter 1. People think that ghosts only come out at night, or on Halloween, when the world is dark and the walls are thin. But the truth is, ghosts are everywhere. In the bread aisle at your grocery store, in the middle of your grandmother's garden, in the front seat on your bus. Just because you can't see them doesn't mean they aren't there. I'm sitting in history class when I feel the tap, tap, tap on my shoulder, like drops of rain. Some people call it intuition, others second sight. That tickle at the edge of your senses telling you there's something more. This isn't the first time I felt it, not by a long shot. Not even the first time I felt it here at my school. I've tried to ignore it. I always do, but it's no use. It wears away at my focus, and I know the only way to make it stop is to give in. Go and see for myself. From across the room, Jacob catches my eye and shakes his head. He can't feel that tap, 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 but he knows me well enough to know when I do. I shift in my seat, forcing myself to focus on the front of the classroom. Mr. Meyer is valiantly trying to teach, despite the fact it's the last week of school before summer vacation. Toward the end of the Vietnam War in 1975, U.S. troops, my teacher drones on. Nobody can sit still, let alone pay attention. Derek and Will are sleeping with their eyes open. Matt is working on his latest paper football. Alice and Melanie are making a list. Alice and Melanie are popular kids. You can tell because they look like copies. Same shiny hair, same perfect teeth, same painted nails. Where I'm all elbows and knees, round cheeks, and curly brown hair. I don't even own nail polish. I know you're supposed to want to be one of the popular kids, but the truth is, I never have. It just seems like it would be exhausting, trying to keep up with all the rules. Smile, but not too wide. Laugh, but not too loud. Wear the right clothes. Play the right sports. Care about things, but never care too much. Jacob and I have rules too, but those are different. As if on cue, Jacob stands up and makes his way toward Melanie's desk. He could be a popular kid, I think, with his floppy blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and good humor. He shoots me a devilish look before perching on the edge of her desk. He could be, but there's just one problem. Jacob's dead. Things we need for movie night, he reads aloud from Melanie's paper, but I'm the only one who can hear him. Melanie folds another sheet, an invitation, I can tell by the capital letters, the pink pen, and reaches forward to pass it to Jenna, who sits in front of her. As Melanie does this, her hand goes straight through Jacob's chest. He looks down as if offended, then hops off the desk. Tap, 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 goes the feeling in my head, like a whisper I can't quite hear. Impatient, I check the clock on the wall, waiting for the lunch bell. Jacob meanders over to Alice's desk next, examining the many multicolored pens she keeps lined up across the top. He leans in close and gingerly brings one of his fingers to the pens, all his focus narrowed on the nearest one as he pokes it. But the pen doesn't move. In the movies, poltergeists can lift televisions and slide beds across the floor, but the truth is, it takes a lot of spirit power for a ghost to reach across the veil, the curtain between their world and ours. And the ghosts that do have that kind of strength, they tend to be really old and not very nice. The living may take strength from love and hope, but the dead grow strong on darker things, on pain and anger and regret. Jacob furrows his brow as he tries, and fails, to flick Matt's paper football. I'm glad he's not made of all that stuff. I don't actually know how long Jacob's been dead. I think the word quietly because I know he doesn't like it. It can't have been that long, since there's nothing retro about him. He's got on a superhero t-shirt, dark jeans, and high tops, but he doesn't talk about what happened, and I don't ask. Friends deserve a little privacy, even if he can read my mind. I can't read his, but all things considered, I would rather be alive and not psychic than psychic and a ghost. He looks up at the word ghost and clears his throat. I prefer the phrase corporeally challenged. I roll my eyes because he knows I don't like it when he reads my mind without asking. Yes, it's a weird side effect of our relationship, but come on, boundaries. It's not my fault you think so loud, Jacob replies with a smirk. I snort, and a few students glance my way. I sink lower in my chair, my sneakers knocking against my book bag on the floor. The invitation Melanie passed to Jenna makes its way around the room. It doesn't stop at my desk. I don't mind. Summer is almost here, and that means fresh air and sunshine and books to read for fun. It means the annual family trek down to the rented beach on Long Island so Mom and Dad can work on their next book. But most of all, it means no hauntings. I don't know what it is about the beach house. Maybe the fact that it's so new, or the way it sits on a calm stretch of shore, but there seem to be far fewer ghosts down there than here in upstate New York. Which means that as soon as school's out, I get 6 full weeks of sun and sand and good night's sleep. 6 weeks without the tap, tap, tap of restless spirits. 6 weeks of feeling almost normal. I can't wait for the break. I can't wait. And yet, the moment the bell rings, I'm up, backpack on one shoulder and purple camera strap on the other, letting my feet carry me toward that persistent tap, tap, tap. Crazy idea, says Jacob, falling into step beside me. But we could just go to lunch. It's Meatloaf Thursday, I think, careful not to answer out loud. I'd rather face the ghosts. Hey now, he says, but we both know Jacob's not a normal ghost, just like I'm not a normal girl. Not anymore. There was an accident. A bike, a frozen river. Long story short, he saved my life. Yeah, I'm practically a superhero, Jacob says, right before a locker swings open in his face. I wince, but he passes straight through the door. It's not that I forget what Jacob is. It's pretty hard to forget when your best friend is invisible to everyone else. But it's amazing what you can get accustomed to. And it says something, that the fact that Jacob's been haunting me for the past year isn't even the strangest part of my life. We hit the split in the hall. Left goes to the cafeteria. Right goes to the stairs. Last chance for normal, Jacob warns, but he's got that crooked grin when he says it. We both know we passed normal a long time ago. We go right. Down the stairs and along another hall, against the flow of lunchtime traffic, and with each turn, the tap, tap, tap gets stronger, turning into a pull like a rope. I don't even have to think about where to go. In fact, it's easier if I stop thinking and just let it reel me in. It draws me to the doors of the auditorium. Jacob shoves his hands in his pockets and mutters something about bad ideas, and I remind him he didn't have to come, even though I'm glad he did. 9th rule of friendship, he says. Ghost watching is a two-person sport. That it is, I say, snapping the cap off my camera lens. It's a clunky old beast, this camera, a manual with a busted viewfinder and black and white film, hanging off my shoulder on its thick purple strap. If a teacher catches me in the auditorium, I'll say I was taking photos for the school paper, even though all the clubs have ended for the year. And I never worked for the paper. I push open the auditorium doors and step inside. The theater is huge, with a high ceiling and heavy red curtains that hide the stage from view. Suddenly, I realize why the tap, tap, tap has led me here. Every school has stories, ways to explain that creaking sound in the boys' bathroom, that cold spot at the back of the English room, the smell of smoke in the auditorium. My school's the same. The only difference is that when I hear a ghost story, I get to find out if it's real. Most of the time it's not. A creaky sound is just a door with bad hinges. A cold feeling is just a draft. But as I follow the tap, tap, tap down the theater aisle and up onto the stage, I know there's something to this particular story. It's the one about a boy who died in a play. Apparently, a long time ago, when the school first opened, there was a fire in the second act of A Midsummer Night's Dream. The set went up in flames, but everyone got out, or so they thought, until they found the boy under the trap door. Jacob shivers beside me, and I roll my eyes. For a ghost, he scares so easily. Have you ever thought, he says, that you don't scare easily enough? But I scare just as easily as anyone. Believe it or not, I don't want to spend my time searching for ghosts. It's just that if they're there, I can't ignore them. It's like knowing there's someone standing right behind you and being told not to turn around. You can feel their breath on your neck, and every second you don't look, your mind just makes it worse because in the end, what you don't see is always scarier than what you do. I climb onto the stage, Jacob at my heels. I can feel him hesitating, his own reluctance dragging me back as I pull up a corner of the heavy red curtain and slip backstage. Jacob follows, passing straight through the curtain. It's dark here. So dark, it takes a second for my eyes to adjust to the various props and benches scattered across the stage. A thin ribbon of light comes from beneath the curtain. It's quiet, but there's an eerie sense of motion. The faint groan of sandbags settling on their hinges. The whisper of air beneath the floorboards. The rustle of what I hope is paper and not rats. I know that some of the older kids in school dare each other to go back here, to put their ear to the floor and listen for the boy who didn't make it. I heard them bragging about it once in the hall, how long they'd each lasted. 1 minute, 2, 5. Some claim they heard the boy's voice. Others say they smelled smoke, heard the footsteps of fleeing children. But it's hard to know where the rumors end and the truth picks up. Nobody dared me to come here. They didn't have to. When your parents write books about paranormal activity, people assume you're weird enough to go on your own. I guess they're right. I'm halfway across the darkened stage when I trip over something and stumble forward. Jacob's hand shoots out to catch me, but his fingers go through my arm, and I bang my knee on the wooden floor. My palm smacks hard, and I'm surprised when the floor bounces a little, until I realize I'm on top of the trap door. The tap, tap, tap grows more insistent under my hands. Something dances at the edge of my sight, a thin gray curtain caught in a constant breeze. Different from the heavy red stage curtain. This one, no one else can see. The veil. The boundary between this world and somewhere else. Between the living and the dead. This is what I'm looking for. Jacob shifts his weight from foot to foot. Let's get this over with. I get back to my feet. Oliver, buddy. Back off, buddy. He's bullying Charlie. He likes to back her into a corner. I get back to my feet. Ghost 5, I say, for luck. A ghost 5 is like a high five for friends who can't really touch. It's basically just me putting out my hand and him pretending to hit it, both of us murmuring a soft smack sound on contact. Oof, says Jacob, pulling his hand away. You hit too hard. I laugh. He's such a dork sometimes. But the laughter makes space in my chest, clears out the fear and nerves as I reach for the veil. I've seen people on TV, ghost whisperers, talk about crossing over, connecting with the other side like it's flipping a switch or opening a door. But for me, it's this, finding the part in the curtain, catching hold of the fabric, and pulling. Sometimes, when there's nothing to find, the veil is barely there, more smoke than cloth and hard to catch hold of. But when a place is haunted, really haunted, the fabric twists around me, practically pulling me through. Right here, right now, it dances between my fingers, waiting to be caught. I grab hold of the curtain, take a deep breath, and pull. If you're concerned about the scariness of this book, I would just say it's kind of spooky. You can see it's already kind of spooky. And a little sad because it talks about people having died in the past. And it's got some like action and danger in it, but it's not real scary. So it's up to you. Think about what kind of books you normally like. And I definitely encourage giving it a try. But I know I don't like really scary things myself, so I understand if you don't want to read a book that's spooky like this. Chapter 2. When I was younger, I used to be afraid of the monster in the closet. I couldn't go to sleep until my dad came in, threw open the closet door, and showed me it was empty. Crossing the veil is like opening the closet door. Of course, the difference is monsters aren't real. The closet was always empty. The veil, not so much. A chill washes over my skin. For a second, I'm not backstage, but underwater, the icy current closing over my head, the light vanishing as something heavy pulls me down, down, down. Cassidy. I blink at the sound of Jacob's voice, and the memory of the river is gone. I'm backstage again, and everything is the same, but different. The stage is faded, like an old photograph, but it's not as dark as it was before. Instead, it's lit up by a handful of spotlights, and I can hear the murmur of an audience beyond the curtain. Jacob's still at my side, but he looks solid, real. I glance down at myself. As always, I look more or less the same, a little washed out, but still me, down to the camera around my neck. The only real difference is the light inside my chest, a coil of cool blue-white brightness that shines straight through my ribs like the filament in a light bulb. Like Iron Man, Jacob sometimes jokes. I hold the camera against my front to muffle the glow. Places, calls an adult's voice from the wings, and I jump. Jacob grabs my sleeve to steady me, and this time his hand doesn't go through. He has more weight, or I have less, but either way I'm grateful for the contact. Act 2, the voice adds, and I know what this is, when this is, the night of the fire. In a flurry, like bats set loose, boys and girls in fairy crowns and glittering capes race across the stage. They don't notice me and Jacob. The curtains come up, and the audience murmurs from the darkened theater. My first urge is to duck, to scramble back into the wings, but I remind myself that the audience isn't really there. This place, this space, this time, it belongs to the ghost and his memories. Everything else is just set dressing. I raise the camera, not bothering to look through the viewfinder. It's cracked. I snap a few quick photos, knowing that the most I'll see on the film is a shadow of what's here, a little more than normal, a little less than truth. And to think, whispers Jacob wistfully, we could be in the cafeteria having lunch like normal people. You can't eat, and I see ghosts, I whisper back as the second act begins. The fairies gather in the makeshift woods around their queen. I scan the stage, the bridges, overhead, the props, searching for the source of the fire. Maybe that's why I'm drawn to places like this. Ghosts stick around for a reason. Maybe if someone learns the truth, if I learn the truth about what happened, it'll bring them peace. They'll go away. That's not how it works, whispers Jacob. My head snaps towards him. What do you mean? He opens his mouth to answer when a boy appears. He's short, with pale skin and a mop of black curls, and I know he's the one, the ghost. There's just this feeling, like the ground is tipping toward him. I watch as his cape catches on the ropes and rigging in the wings. He manages to pull free, stumbles onto the stage in front of us, but he drops his crown and has to double back. For a second, his eyes meet mine. And I think he sees me, and I want to say something, but Jacob presses a hand over my mouth and shakes his head. The music starts, and the boy's eyes cloud, and I watch him take his place. We should go, whispers Jacob, but I can't, not yet. I need to know what happened. As if on cue, I hear the hiss of a rope and turn to see the rigging, the one the boy got caught on, coming loose, uncoiling. A bag of sand slides, sinks, falls, and as it does, it catches on a power box, knocks a fuse. There's a spark, just a spark, such a small thing. But as I watch, it leaps to the nearest thing, an unused piece of the paper forest, shoved into the wings. Oh no, I whisper as the play continues. It doesn't start as a fire, not at first. It is only warmth and smoke. Smoke that goes unnoticed in the darkened theater. I look up and watch the thin tendrils spread and thicken and coat the ceiling like a low cloud. Still, no one notices. Not until, at last, it becomes fire. There's so much kindling on the stage. A forest made out of wooden planks and gossamer and paint. It catches so fast, and finally the spell of the play is broken. The fairy students scatter, and the audience panics, and I know it's just a memory, an echo of something already said and done, but I can feel the heat as it spreads. Jacob grabs my hand, pulling me away from the raging flames. Even through the panic, My fingers turn the camera crank, snapping photos, eager to catch something, as the world around me turns to smoke and fire and a panic. My head is beginning to feel foggy, like I've been holding my breath. I know I've been here long enough that it's time to go, but my feet won't move. And then I see the dark-haired boy trying to stay low the way you're taught in class. But the fire is spreading so fast, swallowing the set on every side, climbing the curtains. There's nowhere to run. The whole stage is up in flames. So he goes down, shuffles on his hands and knees until he reaches the trap door. Don't! I call, but of course it's useless. He doesn't listen, doesn't turn. He pulls the door up and climbs down into the dark just before a piece of burning set collapses on top of the stage, pinning the trapdoor shut. Cassidy, says Jacob, but I can't tear my eyes away from the fire, even as my lungs fill with smoke. Jacob grabs me by the shoulders. We have to go, he orders, and when I don't move, he gives me a push and I stumble, falling backward over a wooden bench. By the time I hit the stage floor, it's cold. The fire is gone, as is the light coming from my chest. Jacob crouches over me, ghostly again, and I slump back, breathless. Sometimes, you see, I get stuck. It's like Neverland in Peter Pan. The longer the lost boys stayed, the more they forgot. The longer I'm on the wrong side of the veil, the harder it is to get out. Jacob crosses his arms. Are you happy now? Happy isn't the right word. The tapping is still there. It never goes away. But at least I know now what's on the other side. It makes it easier to ignore. Sorry. I get to my feet, brushing the invisible ashes from my jeans. I can still taste the smoke. Rule number 21 of friendship, says Jacob. Don't leave your friend in the veil. The school bell rings as he says it. Lunch is officially over. All right, let's do one more chapter, chapter 3. Before we go any further, I have to back up. You see, there are 3 things you need to know. Thing number 1, for as long as I can remember, I've taken pictures. Dad says that the world is always changing every second of every day, and so is everything in it, which means that the you are right now is different from the you were when you started reading this sentence. Crazy, right? And our memories change too. For instance, I swear the teddy bear I had growing up was green, but according to my parents, it was orange. But when you take a photograph, things stay still. The way that they were is the way that they were is the way that they will always be, which is why I love pictures. Thing number 2, my birthday is in late March, right at that place when the seasons run together, when the sun is warm but the wind is cold, and trees are starting to blossom but the ground hasn't quite thawed. Mom likes to say I was born with one foot in winter and the other in spring. That's why I can't sit still and why, according to her, I'm always searching for trouble because I don't belong to one place. Thing number 3, we live in a suburban town surrounded by fields and hills and a fair number of ghosts, and trees that change color and rivers that freeze for the winter and 100 picture-perfect landscapes. These 3 things don't seem connected, the photos and the time and the place, but they're all important, I promise. Threads in the fabric. For my 11th birthday, Mom and Dad gave me my camera, the vintage one you already know about, with a purple strap and an old-school flash and an aperture that you rotate by hand. All the kids at school use their phones as cameras, but I wanted something solid, something real. It was love at first sight, and right away I knew where I wanted to go, what I wanted to shoot. There's this place a few miles from our house, a cleft in the hills, and when the sun sets, it sets right there, nested between the 2 slopes, like a ball cupped in someone's hands. I'd been there a dozen times, and it never looked the same. I had this idea of going every day for a year, capturing each and every sunset, and I wanted to start right then. Remember what I said about being born in March? Well, for the first time that year, it was actually warm enough to ride my bike, even if the air still had a bite to it, as Mom likes to say. So I looped the camera's purple strap around my neck and took off toward the hills on my bike, racing against the sun, tires hissing over half-frozen ground, through the streets, and past the soccer fields and onto the bridge. The bridge. A short stretch of metal and wood suspended over the water, the kind of bridge you had to take turns on because it wasn't wide enough for two cars. I was halfway across when the truck whipped around the curve and hurtled towards me. I swerved out of the way, and so did the truck, tires screeching as my bike slammed into the railing hard enough to make sparks fly, hard enough to send me over the handlebars and over the railing. I fell. It sounds simple, doesn't it? Like a stumble, a trip, a skinned knee. But it was 20 feet down into the water that had only days before been frozen solid. And when I broke the surface, the force and the cold knocked all the air from my lungs. My vision went white and then black, and by the time it came back, I was still sinking, the camera like a lead weight around my neck, pulling me down, down, down. The river darkened, the surface above a shrinking ripple of light. Somewhere beyond the water, I thought I saw someone, the smudge of a person, all shadow. But then the shadow was gone, and I was still sinking. I didn't think about dying, didn't think about anything except the icy water in my lungs, the pressing weight of the river, and even those things started to fade, and all I thought was, I'm falling away from the light. They tell you to go toward it, and I tried, but I couldn't. My limbs were too heavy. There was no air left. I don't remember what happened next. Not exactly. The world did a kind of stutter, like when a movie freezes, gets jammed, skips forward. And then I was sitting on the riverbank, gasping for air as a boy crouched beside me in jeans and a superhero shirt, his blonde hair sticking up as if he'd just run his fingers through it. That was close, he said. At the time, I had no idea. What happened? I asked through chattering teeth. You fell in, he said. I pulled you out. Which didn't make sense because I was soaked through, but he wasn't even wet. Maybe if I hadn't been shivering so hard, maybe if my eyes weren't aching from the river, maybe if my head wasn't so full of ice, I would have noticed his strange gray pallor. The way I could almost see through him. But I was too tired, too cold. I'm Jacob, he said. Cassidy, I said, slumping back onto the bank. Hey, he said, leaning over me. Stay awake. I heard other voices, then the slam of car doors, the skidding of boots down the half-frozen bank, the distant warmth of someone's coat, but I couldn't keep my eyes open. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed, and Mom and Dad were there, their hands so warm on mine. Jacob was there too, sitting cross-legged in a spare hospital chair. It didn't take me long to realize that no one else could see him. My camera was on the bedside table, the purple strap frayed, and the viewfinder cracked. It was damaged, but not ruined. Changed, but not destroyed. Kind of like me. A little special, a little strange. Not quite alive, but definitely not. I mean, can someone really die if they don't end up dead? Are they really alive if they come back? The word for that seems like it should be undead, but I'm not a zombie. My heart has that steady thump-thump, and I eat and sleep and do all the things that go with living. Near death. That's what they call it. But I know it wasn't just near. I was standing right on top of it, under it, long enough for my eyes to adjust, the way they would in a dark room, long enough for me to make out the edges of the space before being dragged back into the bright, cold light. In the end, I guess Mom was right. I have one foot in winter and one in spring, one foot with the living and one with the dead. A week later, I found the veil. Jacob and I were taking a walk, trying to wrap our heads around our strange connection. I mean, I'd never been haunted before, and he'd never haunted anyone, when it happened. We were cutting through an empty lot, and all of a sudden I felt it. the tap, tap, tap of someone staring, the shivery sensation of a spider web on bare skin. I saw the edge of gray cloth at the corner of my sight. I should have looked away, but I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I felt myself turn toward it. I caught the camera in my hand, and for an instant, I was falling again, crashing through the surface of the river, but I didn't let go. And when I blinked, Jacob was still next to me, only he looked solid, real, and just as confused as I was. And the empty lot wasn't empty anymore. We were standing inside a warehouse, the crank and clank of metal echoing off the walls, and someone somewhere was sobbing. The veil itself didn't scare me, but that sound, the sense of walking into someone else's life or death, scared me, and I pulled free of that place as fast as I could, wiping off the veil as if it were just a spider web stuck to my clothes. I swore I'd never go back. I thought I was telling the truth. But a couple of weeks later, I felt it again, the tap, 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 the brush of that gray cloth, and before I knew it, I was reaching out, taking hold, pulling the curtain aside, while Jacob groaned and sulked and grudgingly followed me through. And here we are, 1 year later. For most people, life and death are pretty black and white, but something happened that day when Jacob pulled me out of the water. I guess I pulled him out of somewhere too, and we got tangled up, and now I'm not all alive, and he's not all dead. If we were in a comic book, this would be our origin story. Some people get a spider bite or a vat of acid. We got a river. It's the end of that chapter. Next chapter is chapter 4, and we will start that tomorrow. Thank you for joining me. I hope you're enjoying this beginning of this story. I have already read this story, which you may have guessed since I was talking about what kind of scariness to expect earlier. So I know what happens, although it's been a while, so I'm looking forward to refreshing my memory. But like I said, if you're a little bit nervous about it, I say give it a try. It is spooky, as you can tell, but it's not real scary or super gross, I don't think. I might flip through it and see if I come up with any warnings I want to give anybody before I start reading next time. Okay? Have a good day.